Hello, this is the first of these short podcast/videos where I read the essay that I just posted on Substack and maybe even chat about it a little bit. Although I'm not really going to do that this time because it's already running at 20 minutes and that's enough for anyone's attention span. This essay is going to detail what I call the narrow abundance. So the abundance of the always on online world, the stuff that sits outside of what it means to be human, of the kind of intuiting, empathizing, connecting, communicating piece that makes us who we are, and more about technologies and systems that are really, really primed to make us feel quite a lot less like humans. Hopefully there's a decent discussion of what this narrow abundance is, and also why we're living in a world of kind of physical scarcity and also scarcity within the mind as well. I finish with a kind of 1920s prediction game as to what the 2020s would look like with Keynes and Spengler. Hold on to the end. Hopefully you'll find that interesting. And obviously, if you've got any thoughts or comments or book recommendations or pushback or critiques, please just let me know. Pop me a message. I hope you find this useful, and I will keep doing podcasts and keep doing videos if it seems like people are going to listen or watch. So, without further ado, on to the essay. Introduction, Part 1, A Narrow Abundance. We live in an age of abundance, or that is what we are led to believe. Across the Western world, we have more than enough stuff. Technology's bounty and our steadfast commitment to consumerism have left us feeling uncomfortably full, but far from satisfied. Our work is busy, with new technologies boosting our productivity, turning us into ever more refined cogs in the mechanism of business. After a long day's work, we return home exhausted, engaging with an abundance of passive entertainment sources demanding our attention. We find escape in screens, in binge watching, lost in YouTube rabbit holes, doom scrolling on never-ending feeds, checking in with our tribes, adding layers of plaster onto increasingly hardened online identities. Our houses are full to bursting, a digestive system struggling to ingest the daily packages and the one-click purchases and the overnight deliveries, these hits of dopamine that add clutter and waste as cardboard packaging from these impulse purchases spills out from our recycling bins. Abundance undergirds the business model of the most powerful companies of our time. We all know, deep down, that it is our attention, our data, our analytics that provides the lifeblood of these tech behemoths. Unlike monopolies of the past, where market capture consisted of resources like oil, cabling, tobacco, the resource base of today's monopolists is human attention. We trade our attention for a narrow form of abundance. These tech titans need their organizations to keep growing. Their investors command them. Therefore, ever greater investment into more content is necessary to grasp our limited attention and finite data. The masterstroke of these companies is to encourage us to become the creators of the content hosted on their platforms. In exchange, creators receive an unsatisfactory slither of the economic pie and worthless clicks of digital affirmation. There is a feeling of limitlessness about our increasingly online world. Feeds which never end, the next episode playing automatically after the last, algorithmically derived music following on from the album that you specifically wanted to listen to, the excess positivity of chatbots, always encouraging you to ask the next question. In this age of abundance, of limitlessness, it becomes increasingly hard to know who to trust and what to value. We find it harder and harder to identify the signal through the noise, living in a world where there is more and more information and less meaning. Living in an online world which, by its nature, is an abstraction of real life, where, as Guy Debord laments, in the society of the spectacle, Everything that was directly lived has receded into a representation. Unlike these technology products, with their infinite scalability and their ability to grow exponentially, humans are necessarily limited and stubbornly unscalable. Here lies the root of our unease. Since the birth of the machine age, we have been encouraged to compete with and replicate the scalable, limitless elements of technology that so benefit the bottom line of business. As workers, we are encouraged to use a baffling compendium of productivity tools, encouraged to maximize each and every hour of our working day. The global job market compels us to gain skills, credentials, and knowledge that will make us more effective inputs into the business mechanism. We have, in short, become entrepreneurs of ourselves, trying desperately to break free from our finitude, all the while knowing that at machine-like tasks, we are a pitiful competitor. We slack off, we get bored, we need sleep, we're frustratingly bound by space and time. Surely we think to ourselves, it's only a matter of time until an always on, always smiling automaton guts our jobs. Outside of work, we try to cram it all in, structuring our time and using all manner of productivity hacks to tame the abundance of things we can do with our time. We wish for limitlessness, having been convinced that this is the path to satisfaction. We look enviously at machines and algorithms with their infinity. We even hack our bodies, hoping to live longer, possibly even forever, finally breaking free from the limits of time and space. This mechanistic, one-dimensional world sees little utility in a walk in nature, unless, of course, your steps are counted, or the undirected joy of poetry. Think of the opportunity cost. You could be reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. A long evening in a pub, setting the world to right. Unless, of course, you review the pub online afterwards. The first laugh of an infant. Well, you've got to post it. The kind support of Dave from accounts in the office all hands. What? You still have meetings? In an office? Or the inconsequential small talk with a shop assistant? Surely you've got to buy online, or at least invest in self-service kiosks. The belief in the spiritual realm. Well, we all know that religion can be monetized, and the innate desire for magic and for mystery. Well, write a screenplay, turn it into some content. The abundance of the online world is, by its nature, a narrow representation. By contrast, the analog world is a place of abject scarcity. Online abundance, what Emil Durkheim called the malady of the infinite in his 1893 division of labor in society, and the pressure to break free from our corporeality has resulted in a thinning out of our lived experience, a flattening of the soul. That's a wonderful phrase coined by Alan Bloom in The Closing of the American Mind, written nearly 40 years ago. We live in a world blighted by the endemics of burnout, depression, anxiety, and loneliness. A precarious world, unmoored from the anchors of local community, from churches and pubs, community centres and village halls. Uprooted by the rapacious forces of global capitalism, with the endless pursuit of money now sitting on what British author Paul Kingsnorth calls a throne at the heart of our culture. So much of this limitlessness, this narrow abundance, seems to be abstracted. Its apparatus, logic, and beneficiaries placed just beyond the eye line. Like a flash flood or a coastal squall, we feel powerless in the face of this supposedly indisputable business and organizational logic. We've become untethered, first from the product and the process of our labor, what Marx described as alienation, and increasingly from the things of life that we used to be able to trust and control. We are cowed by a hailstorm of fake news, of AI-generated images, bots posing as humans, hallucinations, deepfakes, scams, catfishing, pig butchering. lashing rain and viling winds obscuring our vision. Without agency, or the ability through our actions to change the state of things, we fall into a necessary melancholy and depression, a sense of helplessness at the inevitability of it all. This untethering exists in our minds and in our worlds. We look outside our windows and see crumbling public infrastructure, a denuded and despoiled natural world. Our governments are in a permanent state of crisis, weighed down by the lumpen debt of past excess, in hoc to AI princelings and the all-powerful bond market. Labour or Conservative, it doesn't really matter. It seems that each government that passes through Whitehall isn't really working for us, our neighbourhoods and our communities, and instead appears more interested in the often incomprehensible and abstracted machine of money, power, and markets. Therefore, it is not surprising we are angry. Angry at the techno-utopian, proselytizing the benefits of ever greater virtual connectedness from their New Zealand bunker, sending their own kids to no-screen elementary schools, furrowing their high IQ brows over blueprints for interplanetary life. The most shamefaced admission that life on Earth has become simply unbearable. As Paul Kingsnorth poetically states, we find ourselves rootless, rudderless, unmoored in a great sea of chaos, angry, confused, shouting at the world and at each other. It recalls Howard Beale, longtime anchor for UBS Evening News' famous speech in the 1976 film Network. After years of being driven to the point of madness by just how bad and how out of control modern American society had become, the mad prophet of the silver screen takes to the airwaves, encouraging viewers to open their windows and shout, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it." Beale continues, "I'm a human being, goddammit. My life has value." Keynes got it wrong. For all of his genius, Keynes was hopeless at multi-generational predictions. In an essay titled The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, Keynes sought to present a sunnier alternative to the pessimistic mood gripping his colleagues and his country's economy. He looks 100 years into the future, to an economy where productivity has increased eightfold and there is more than enough of those things that are absolute, meaning that by the late 2020s, the economic problem of scarcity may indeed be solved. He then correctly identifies that the problem that will need solving is what he calls the permanent problem of the human race. That, as mimetic creatures, we have an insatiable desire to consume, to satisfy the need and desire for superiority. So far, so reasonable. However, it is in his assumption that the fundamental question of an early 21st century Western society will be how to use our freedom from pressing economic cares, how to occupy the leisure, which science and compound interest have won for him to live wisely and agreeably and well, that his crystal ball seems to have started to act up. He continues, acknowledging that all of us have, deep within us, the old Adam, that's what he calls it, the inherent need to do some work. But we will be satisfied with small duties, with 3-hour shifts or a 15-hour week, more than enough to satisfy both our economic needs and our desire for work-induced fulfillment. Here, Keynes diverges further still from our present reality, stating somewhat hopefully that the love of money as a possession, the most distasteful of human qualities, will be recognized as a somewhat disgusting morbidity. Finally, we will be able to discard the compulsion for accumulation that animates the industrious squirrel as he prepares for winter. There will, Keynes acknowledges, still be some people who are driven by an unsatisfied purposiveness to blindly pursue wealth, but happily we will be under no obligation to applaud or encourage them. As he continues, we start to grimace at Keynes's naivety. And I quote, "I see us free, therefore, to return to some of the most sure and certain principles of religion and traditional virtue, that avarice is a vice, and that the exaction of usury is a misdemeanor, and the love of money is detestable. And those who walk most truly in the paths of virtue and sane wisdom are those who take least thought for the morrow. We shall once more value ends above means and prefer the good to the useful. We shall honor those people who can teach us how to pluck the hour and the day virtuously and well. The delightful people who are capable of taking direct enjoyment in things, the lilies of the field who toil not, neither do they spin. Keynes' logic was reasonable. As productivity unlocks greater abundance, the luxury of boundless leisure afforded to the upper class will start to trickle down, covering the middle and ultimately the working classes, until we can once more dedicate our lives to human flourishing. Of course, interwar Keynes could not have predicted the extent to which globalization has flattened the world, economic progress becoming relative and not absolute. Nor could he have predicted the internet and its associated monopolistic business models. However, Keynes underestimated the driving principle of companies and technologies: to grow. Companies, by their very nature, succeed by growing and are rewarded for their excess growth and profits by a cheaper cost of capital and excess shareholder returns. To say technology seeks to grow or to innovate is something of a tautology. The natural combination of for-profit companies with the necessity of technological innovation have together solved the economic problem. However, both our identity and waking hours are, if anything, more tied to the labor and our workplace than in Keynes's time of relative economic scarcity. The natural combination of for-profit companies with the necessity of technological innovation have together solved the economic problem. However, both our identity and waking hours are, if anything, more tied to our labor and our workplace than in Keynes's time of relative economic scarcity. Keynes also underestimated both our near universal desire for accumulation, as distinct from earning money as a means for its joyful expenditure, and the power of our mimetic desires, the creation of desire through mediators, which serves as the cornerstone of consumerism. He underestimated the god of money and of capitalism, filling the void left by the decaying remnants of Christendom, a space cleared for money culture to move in and commodify the ruins. Add the accelerants of ubiquitous, always-on avenues for consumption and advertising to the kindling of an insecure individualism, and we can start to see how Keynes might have got it so wrong back in 1930. In fact, it was Oswald Spengler's oracular two-volume tome, The Decline of the West, written just before Keynes's essay, that provided a more chilling and ultimately more accurate prediction for the coming century. Spengler describes Western culture from the early medieval period as a Faustian age, a culture which has an irresistible urge towards the infinite, a will and a yearning that knows no rest, but thrusts further and further beyond all bounds. Meanwhile, our prime symbol becomes infinite space, and our prime will is the conquest of the infinite. Spengler might as well have been describing our current lives, whirling dervishes compelled to action, afraid of empty space, trying to cram it all in. Spengler's prediction of a post-Faustian age is also proving more accurate than Keynes. He predicts the Caesarian age, a time of strong rulers, an absence of democracy, the idolization of success, the culture of money, the primacy of power. What comes next, Spengler calls disintegration, which he describes as a state of congealment, of cold intellect and barren routine. Life has become an affair of administration. In this petrification, the great soul of a culture is no longer felt. So much of what Spengler describes in both the Caesarian age and its successor strikes a chilling chord with our current condition. Strong men rule, and techno feudalists mandate power and money as the animating forces of our stress filled lives. All the while, the remnants of culture, institutions, religions, rituals, and festivals are being denuded and monetized, leading to a rootlessness and, as Spengler darkly predicts, the death of the soul. None of this is particularly optimistic. Keynes underestimated some of our darker desires, and Spengler was downright misanthropic. It is very easy to sound smart identifying the causes of our current predicament, getting ourselves worked up into a lather of introspection, blame, and ultimately hopelessness. However, the really hard, really necessary job is to look for those green shoots of optimism that help us to find a path to flourishing in this age of narrow abundance.